Hello and welcome back to another episode of A Weekly Waypoint. Today we are back in World of Warcraft Cataclysm Classic, partially because we're going to talk about the, 20th anniversary of WoW and those announcements, but mostly just because I was in a break the mold mood. Unfortunately, speaking of mold, this is the exact same dungeon that we last ran last time I decided to include Cataclysm Classic in the Weekly Waypoint. But the second dungeon's different. We have a fair amount of things to talk about today, so without further ado, for there has already been a sordid amount of that, the World of Warcraft 20th anniversary, the Warcraft 30th anniversary direct happened, I guess I should say, because they announced remasters for Warcraft 1, Warcraft 2, and they're reforging Warcraft 3, which, if you don't know, is one of the worst remakes of all time, and is now slightly better. By slightly better, I mean most of the problems with it seem to have been addressed, but many of the promises they made regarding the remake are just gonna remain forever unfulfilled, such as, redoing all of the cinematics. Although if the one redone cinematic we got with Illidan versus Arthas is anything to go by, that might have been a blessing, because that's a very rare, bad Warcraft cinematic. I mean, it's not bad, it's just not good. If you've never seen it, it's a very famous fight scene in Warcraft lore, and the way it was animated is just really slow and kind of boring. Anyway, I've never played a Warcraft RTS, mostly because I'm not an RTS guy, but after many years and thousands of hours of playing World of Warcraft, I'm curious, and so while I'm not going to go out and pick it up right away, it is available now, I am intrigued and do intend on picking up the battle chest someday. I've seen some people complaining about the Warcraft 1 and 2 remasters with like the hand-drawn art. People have been saying it's like AI upscaling, but I don't think it is, because they literally advertised it as hand-drawn art, so unless they're outright lying, that would be illegal, right? That would be false advertising. But people seem to have issues with it. But hopefully just using the original graphics mode is a faithful recreation of those original games. If not, failing that, the battle chest actually comes with the very original versions of Warcraft 1 and 2. They really don't want to repeat their mistakes with Warcraft 3 Reforged, where they literally forced an update that replaced the original version of the game and is now lost outside of gaming archivism. That's the wrong phrase. Gaming preservationism. That's the one. They also announced 3 things for Classic. They announced that the bog standard Classic era servers are advancing to Mists of Pandaria, which is relevant to me because that's when I started playing this game in earnest, and that's kind of part of the reason why we're playing Cataclysm Classic today. It would be nice to have a level 85 character to kind of like go forth and play Mists with. I kind of doubt that my attention span is going to stick on this game long enough for me to fully level a character before then, though, because there's a lot going on in terms of gaming, and my attention isn't fully on WoW right now, and even the attention that is on WoW right now isn't fully on Classic right now. That being said, they also announced, I think they said like the last update to Season of Discovery, which is going to have like some stuff based around cut content, which is pretty cool. And they also announced something which I thought people would be mad about, but people seem to really be happy with this, which is cool, and for the record, it's something I've been wanting for years. They somewhat jokingly announced World of Warcraft Classic, and this week they are opening brand new Classic servers for people to play through. And while it's true that you can already go and play Classic era servers, there's these kind of museum servers they've had for a while, and you can play like hardcore on those as well. These ones are actually going to progress forwards to the Burning Crusade, and basically what I've been asking for years, ever since they announced Classic, is the EverQuest model of doing things, where instead of just going through it all again a second time and that's that, you actually stagger out like different era servers, and you have the progression servers going through the different eras of the game, because as we're getting to Cataclysm and Mists of Pandaria, people are going, this isn't Classic, this is all new stuff, I stopped playing by now. But to me, who started playing in earnest during Mists, I'm really excited, and I want them to do Warlords Classic, which is probably a very unpopular opinion. But just, tinker with it, solve a few problems if you want to, but if not, just like speed through the phases to get to Legion, it's fine. I mean, people have invested a lot of time into their, Classic era accounts now, right? Getting transmogs, collecting mounts and pets and toys. you would want that to continue onwards, right? Maybe they'll find a way to retroactively apply those to the next era of Classic servers. Either way, I hope this is just something they do in perpetuity. There are differences between the new Classic servers that are opening and the original ones that opened back in, I want to say, 2018, 2019, but I'm not Classic savvy enough to tell you what they are. And finally, we got a look ahead at the next War Within patch, which I'm going to be honest, I'm not too thrilled about. I'm not a huge Goblins fan. I'm still not really sold on them, and having 11.1 being all about the Undermine just makes me think, oh, I might skip 11.1 actually. They're doing something cool with like a dynamic ground mount with the car where you can do drifting and stuff, which might be worth checking out, but I'm in no rush, and I'm a little concerned because 11.2 on the roadmap, I haven't seen anyone talk about this yet, but it does not mention a new zone. I'm like, oh, is this it for the War Within then? Because I loved the start of this expansion, but it definitely felt like an opener. I would be bummed if we didn't have our usual end of expansion. You know, the 0.2 or 0.3 like zone patches tend to be my favourite, so if they're doing away with those, I'm going to be a little disappointed. But they also teased player housing for the Midnight expansion next year. I think it's next year. Did they announce that Midnight's next year? I know we're getting a Midnight reveal next year. I forget what the roadmap looks like. I'm very professional. I mean, we're in November. I keep forgetting we're near the end of the year, so yes, the Midnight expansion reveal will be next year. I think summer. So maybe there's time for an 11.3 with an extra big zone in it. I don't know. I'm not super dialed into this game right now. Can you tell? But yes, they teased player housing, and there's very little in the way of details because I think they probably wanted to tease it as soon as possible to check the temperature on what people do and do not want while they still have a development time to affect these changes. For me, I've played a whole bunch of different MMOs, which almost all of them have player housing in. I would be quite content with ESO's housing system, just please don't milk it for microtransactions the way ESO does. But if I could just own multiple homes, and it's just like a house in the open world, and I walk up to it and get instanced into my own player house on the inside, or around with gardens and stuff, that would be perfectly fine by me. I know a lot of people are going, this is just going to be garrisons again, and to those people I say, you are extremely cynical if you think Blizzard are just going to forget everything that went wrong with garrisons. I know they've repeated mistakes in the past, but I just don't have that lack of faith in people's intelligence, I'm sorry. Anyway, there you go, there's some World of Warcraft talk for you, you filthy animals. That's a Home Alone 2 reference. I'm not sure I've ever seen that movie. Can it be cultural appropriation if it's your own culture that you're appropriating? Anyway, headline news this week. Dragon Quest III... Is it the headline news if it's the second thing I'm talking about? Dragon Quest III HD-2D has come out, and like last week's headline news about a game that's just come out that I want to talk about, I've already got a video of gameplay out on my channel which you can go and see. So once again, I am undermining my own, like, hey, let's talk about this thing in the weekly waypoint thing. I'm very tired. But yeah, Dragon Quest III HD-2D has been one of my most anticipated games of the year for a few years now, because it sure did go on the back burner for a while there with news. But it's finally out. I threw down a rare entry price purchase, and I have played about 6 hours of it. We can check right now. I've played 6.4 hours. In other words, I'm just past Romaria. I've just dealt with Robin Bleeding Hood. And I won't call that a spoiler because this game doesn't really have too much in the way of story, and I wasn't expecting it to, don't worry. As opposed to later Dragon Quest titles, the story's not really trying to do anything new because it's still early enough within the genre for it to be telling the story to be the thing that's new. You play a silent protagonist. I mean, I guess you always play a silent protagonist. But you compose a party of generated companions, which means they're not characters per se, they don't have dialogue. I was kind of hoping the personality system would tie into them having some kind of, you know, like Animal Crossings can be burly. Is it burly? Did I say Animal Crossings can be burly? Animal Crossing villagers can be like surly or grumpy or sassy or whatever the personality types are called. And they're, broadly speaking, very similar characters for sharing those personalities. I was hoping there'd be something like that with Party Talk, but there's no Party Talk. But given that I played Final Fantasy 1 and 2 pixel remasters this year and thoroughly enjoyed them, you better believe that I'm able to thoroughly enjoy a classic RPG like Dragon Quest III. Didn't mean for that to rhyme, but since it did, that's quite sublime. No, stop cringing. Get your mouse away from that back button. Anyway, this game is freaking gorgeous. Obviously, the HD-2D style isn't exactly new. We've had it with Octopath Travelers 1 and 2 and Project Triangle Strategy and Live Alive, and that's a game I still want, by the way, and a bunch of other games within the genre not made by Square, who have also taken a crack at the visual style. But for my money, Dragon Quest III HD-2D is by far the prettiest. Octopath Traveler have this kind of weird gritty color scheme going on. That's not really the right way to talk about that, because it's not really gritty, but you know what I mean. It's a little bit more down to earth color tones, and those games still look gorgeous in their own right, don't get me wrong. But Dragon Quest III HD-2D is so vibrant, it's wonderful. Now, I've played a lot of Dragon Quest games and I've never finished one. Furthest I've probably got so far is Dragon Quest VII on 3DS. I would say I'm about a little over halfway through that game, and it's a long one. Out of all of the Dragon Quest titles, Dragon Quest VII, I believe, is the one known for its length. But that one has a good hook. It has an interesting premise. What if you go back in time to islands which don't exist and find out why they don't exist and restore them to the world of the present by saving whatever is causing them to not exist from happening? You're saving the world one island at a time. It's a cool little vehicle for like an anthology of different stories within this world. I like it a lot. In fact, I'd go as far as to say 7 seems to get underrated compared to other Dragon Quest games. But yeah, I've played some 9, I've played some 4, I've played some 11. I do own 8 on 3DS, I just want to finish 7 before I start 8. I know 8 is beloved. But yeah, I'd be lying if I said the simplicity of Dragon Quest 3 isn't, you know, a little bit of a drawback. Despite my excitement for this game, despite how much I'm loving it, there's not that much actively tugging me to boot up the game and continue playing, at least not as far as my ADHD-ass brain goes. Like, I know if I boot it up right now and continue playing, I'm gonna have a fun few hours. I'm gonna have a good time. There's just not much of a hook. And this is something in general I'm trying to be more honest with myself about when it comes to video games, is, you know, even if I'm having a good time playing with them, how much staying power do they have? How much draw me back in-itude is there? There's gotta be a better way of saying that. Because even though Dragon Quest stories are never like the most super complex, you know, plot-heavy, grimdark, I'm saying grimdark like it's an inherently good thing, that's just tone, but you know what I mean. Even though they're not inherently like titillating in terms of story, usually even by Dragon Quest standards, 3 is a little bad. But I'm by no means done with the game. I doubt I'll finish it in one sitting. I'm sure I'll get distracted away from it for good over the course of the next week or two, and I don't regret picking it up now. It does make me wonder what they're doing for Dragon Quest 1 and 2. Like, are they just gonna remake those games in the HD-2D style and leave them largely untouched in terms of content? Because in Dragon Quest 1, you didn't have a party, and in Dragon Quest 2, you had 2 party members. Are they going to change that? Are you going to have a party available in each game? As someone who potentially will not finish Dragon Quest III HD-2D before Dragon Quest 1 and 2 HD-2D come out, I wonder what selling points those games will have to draw me towards them. In other gaming news, or I guess news on games what I'm playing, I'm still playing a whole bunch of Brighter Shores, and I've just reached Chronopolis, which is episode 4 out of 4 in the game, which means I now have every area unlocked in the game, but I still have a lot to do. I've yet to check out, you know, that area's specific professions yet. I've mostly just been running around discovering things. I really like the city. I think it looks cool. It's mostly just been those 2 games this week, to be honest, because those are the 2 big releases I've been looking forward to this year. So let's pivot and instead start discussing what I've been reading, because I have some things to talk to you about on that front this week. First of all, finished Elantris by Brandon Sanderson, which was my in-between book for Fellowship of the Ring of the Two Towers. I have a blurbal reasoning slash review, if you want to use the more formal term, and that is available on my channel if you know the book. I've even included a spoiler-free, or I guess spoiler-light section. I'm always hesitant to call anything spoiler-free, because I think if you know, look up a review of a book, you're going to go into it knowing some things within the first few chapters at least. But that's there. And so I started Two Towers, and I don't know, man, it might have been a mistake to read Elantris in between Fellowship and Two Towers, because J.R.R. Tolkien's storytelling style is definitely something I warmed up to over the course of Fellowship, and having stepped away from it and come back to it, I'm like, Oh, that's right. We do things like this over here, don't we? I'm sure The Two Towers is an excellent book, but I'm a chapter and a half in, and right now it feels like a bit of a slog. So I did what I always do when times are tough in terms of an attention span, and what I've chosen isn't quite doing it for me, and I've allowed myself to get distracted by something completely different. Why does he never finish anything? Who could say? Actually, to be fair, I've read 14 books so far this year, which might well be my record. But yeah, for those of you who don't know, I think it's okay for me to jump between 3 books at a time, usually audiobook, paperbook, ebook formats. The ebook I was supposed to be reading through was The Complete Robot, which is a collection of Isaac Asimov's short stories within his kind of, you know, iRobot slash Foundation slash the other one universe. But the problem with an anthology of short stories is a little bit like what I was talking about for Dragon Quest III. There's nothing really pulling you back to it. So of course I did the sensible thing, and instead of getting back to it, I decided to pick up for 99p. This might make some people excited, for people who know this series, Empire of Silence, the first book in the Sun Eater book series. I've been hearing a lot about this book series. It seems to be one of the most popular sci-fi book series out there at a minute. I believe the first book came out in 2018. I don't know if it's finished yet or not. But basically, it feels to me like a mix between The Last Kingdom, hear me out, and Warhammer 40k. I say The Last Kingdom because the narrative delivery is from the point of view of an old man looking back on his life, a morally, I guess, problematic old man looking back on his life, telling you about his conquests and the things he did and things from his point of view, and he's an unreliable narrator in that sense as well, and yeah, it's pretty cool. I like that, it turns out. And I'm seeing a lot of Warhammer 40k influences. There's a chantry which withholds machine technology from the common people for various reasons. It's not like super duper Warhammer 40k coded, but there's enough of it in there to titillate me. I'm a giant Warhammer 40k noob, by the way, but instead of getting into 40k, I'm getting into this. I'll get there. Henry Cavill's thing will bring it to mainstream, I'm sure, and then I'll be all over it. Not that it needs to be mainstream, I've had a few false starts is all with indie projects. Anyway, I'm like 7 chapters in, and I kind of just want to devour this thing. I love this narration style. The writing style, don't get me wrong, it's not completely my packet of crisps. It's sometimes he spends a little bit too long. Christopher Ruccio, I believe the author is called. Sometimes he spends a little bit too long on details about how the room looks and stuff, and that's always just completely subjective, whoever you are. But sometimes I find it a little bit hard to picture exactly what he's saying because he relies too much on specifics, if that makes sense. But that is, so far, my one and only criticism. And again, that's very subjective. For instance, I don't need to know the specific dimensions of the dueling mat that they're on. But anyway, I'll keep you updated on that. As you can see, we've come to the end of the video, and that'll do me. So thank you very much for watching, and sorry there was no video yesterday, but I'm still recovering from a bout of vertigo, and it's not been fun. I'll catch you in whatever I make next.